Hello and welcome to your Friday night edition of the Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison, and my very wonderful guest, Gavin Harper. It's Calcutta Cup Eve, which is not easy to say, but we're going to I don't know what we're going to talk about, but before we do, a quick word from our sponsor. The Scotland Rugby News podcast is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV tonight. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland, and you can find the one for you, S1 Jobs. So go on, start searching. I genuinely do not know where to start. It has been quite a week. So you were in Italy last week. I think you stayed dry.
Yes. I had to realise you meant the weather rather than alcohol consumption there.
Your
Yes.
social media and that of your fellow members of the press leaves something to be desired for making it look like a work trip, shall we say? But let's not dwell on that. I'm not really sure where to start. In fact, you know what I do? We praised the team selection because we thought players had been picked on form and we thought it was worth a crack. And then 48 hours after the final whistle went, social media was a pretty grim place to be.
Yeah, it was. Look, the team selection was the team that we all wanted. I'm not sure though, given the weather forecast that Scotland knew was coming from very, very early in the week. Looking back on it, we go, our Jamie Dobie and Jamie Dobie in particular, Tom Jordan, the guys that you want in the back three, under those circumstances in those conditions, probably not. And they got caught out. They were absolutely sleeping for the first Italian try. They didn't take the high ball for the second one, and it all sort of unravelled from that. And then when the rain came, I've never seen rain like it for a game, and it was just far too much. It was way too big a lead for Scotland to chase down. But what I would say about that is the way they went about chasing that lead was really bad. Like I just thought nothing worked. The set piece was totally non-existent. They didn't really have much to get. It's difficult to attack in those conditions, but and we keep saying it this week, Italy managed it. So that felt like it didn't function. Finn had virtually no influence, where I thought Garbisi was very good. And that's the same Garbisi who had absolutely chucked it a few weeks ago at the Hive, not interested in very, very similar weather. So look, it was really the whole thing. I think the whole experience was disappointing, and I would have liked more ownership of that after the game and a hands up that that's nowhere near good enough, and Scotland had failed to deliver on what they said they would deliver after the autumn. So it feels a bit like back to, we've had the inquest now. We've been through it with everybody, with all the squad. We've heard from Gregor. We've heard from Peter de Villiers about the scrum. It feels like back to square one almost, and just start again tomorrow.
I kind of commented on this beforehand, and how I said you couldn't look any further past Italy. Like it really is each game as it comes, and the Italy game didn't go in any way according to plan. The set piece is probably as poor as I've seen a Scottish set piece for a number of years. The weather wasn't the factor. The factor was that the lead, when the weather was okay, was too much to overcome. It was kind of even Stevens in the difficult conditions, and Scotland played for that last little bit of time, and George Horne obviously did what he did. There was decisions around kicking for touch instead of kicking for goal that has probably become more of the fashion, because it's almost impossible to stop a catch and drive line out now. Edinburgh, Glasgow both kick for the touch for a 5 metre line out rather than kick for threes, because it just makes sense. Scotland did it. It didn't come off. And it just kind of snowballed from there, and it just got harder and harder to see a way of coming back out of it. You look to your bench, and George Horne certainly made an impact, but last week won't happen again. Like that performance away to Italy, the line out, the scrum, the weather, this week is completely different, and it's an England team who are scarily good and getting better. And George Horne, 2 years ago, we weren't talking about George Horne. We were talking about how wonderful Marcus Smith was. Finn Smith's on his way. It was the battle of the Smiths. Steve Borthwick and becoming England coach and building what he's building, the stars have completely aligned that George Horne is his 10 because he fits perfectly with what Borthwick wants to do. And the whole thing is just getting better and better.
George Ford, you mean?
George Ford has just arrived at exactly the right time, and England look very comfortable with who they are. They get an injury and they bring somebody in from outside the 23, and he's outstanding. Now, the Welsh thing hurts as well, and putting Ben Earl at centre, I know you probably got excited by that because you love all that nonsense, but that just felt like such a it was a really poor weekend in the way that I think Australia opening the World Cup against Hong Kong is a really poor decision. If your eyes were on the Italy-Scotland game and the Wales-England game, I'm not convinced it was a great advert for the competition or for Test rugby, and I'm maybe being overly harsh there, but the Scotland-Italy game, the atmosphere sounded great because there was still something to play for. It was close. The Wales-England game was just, putting Ben Earl at 13, it was like, right, lads, we've got a pretty decent opposed training session here. Let's see if this works. And it just broke my heart a little bit. And this week, social media has not been a nice place to be. Have you seen the Kevin Bridges sketch where he talks about when you're in the boozer, and if Facebook was the boozer, you wouldn't go in that pub? That's kind of what it's been. It's just it's been relentless. And I think, Gregor was pretty prickly. Sione Assis had a bit of a go today. I don't know. It feels like there's been too much talk of the outside noise and the media and the fans and the Gregor, and very little of it has been actually about how do we beat England. And Borthwick, Matt Scott, and we've both spoken to Matt Scott previously, praises Steve Borthwick and says he finds a way to win, and the players are really clear and it's drilled, and that's what they do, and that's how it goes. So I'm really interested to see how tomorrow unfolds. Really interested. And Scotland have obviously made changes.
Yeah, they have. And I'm not hugely surprised that they've made changes. I am slightly surprised they haven't made more. I think you look at the back division, I know that the team that they picked last week was the team that we all said, that's that, give the Glasgow boys a go together. I don't think many of us were clamouring for Tom Jordan at 15 to start. The Blair Kinghorn one, I know people have seen the post of his flight back to Toulouse the other night. I think that, I don't think it takes a huge amount of reading between the lines to suggest that Blair might not be the happiest member of the squad at the minute. And you can probably forgive him for that to a degree, because he's been a nailed-on starter probably since the 23 World Cup, and now he's not even 24th man. Given that he's a guy who covers 10, 15 and the wing, that seems like a slightly odd decision. It's just as odd, and we'll talk about the changes, but it seems just as odd to have a 5-3 bench for the second week in a row when you know that England are going 6-2. England have got the ability to put Ben Earl at 12, 13, and Scotland are going to counter that by bringing on Adam Hastings, presumably only for Finn. And I was even more puzzled by Gregor's explanation of that being that Adam would only cover 10, And so Tom Jordan wouldn't have to worry about, 15, 12, 10. And I thought, well, these guys manage that, and I know it's different levels, but these guys manage that all the time for Glasgow. Jamie Dobie's USP is that he can play on the wing or he can play 9. He's been very good at both. So all of a sudden we're taking one part of that away. George Horne, and to be fair to George Horne, he was very good off the bench. I was surprised to see him in the team last week. He's kind of taken that chance, but last year Scotland were out-muscled by England, and I see no evidence. England have only got better. Scotland are stuck in a rut in the same sort of plateau as they've been for the last 12, 18 months, and I see no evidence that narrative, which apparently, and Gregor had a pop a couple of times this week, the narrative is only set by the media, not by the results, which I think is clutching at straws stuff. I thought some of Sione's comments today was, the media's job's easy. All he's got to do is, he's the man in the arena. He's the guy who's got to shoulder the responsibility. Well, we're the lucky sort of half dozen who are there to ask the questions on behalf of the people that pay the tickets to come and see them. And what's been served up by Scotland recently hasn't been much good. So I just see no evidence of the fact that Scotland will, even if they produce this brilliant free-flowing rugby, which we know they can, and Finn gets going and Huey Pilotu's absolutely on fire, England can say, okay, well, we'll go route one, we'll go set piece, and I think Scotland have got almost no answer to that.
I think the ball's going to be kicked a lot tomorrow.
And again, that's not an area that Scotland did very well in, and so you can't really blame Borthwick or Wigglesworth or, when they first came into that England setup, they struggled to sort of stamp a game plan on the team, and part of it was, well, we'll go forwards and then we'll kick the leather off it. That'll be enough, I think, for England to beat Scotland.
I wonder, like, Jamie Ritchie has performed well against England, and he's a nuisance, and he's the kind of player that you like having in your team and you hate having against you. But that English back row is impressive, and then you've got Curry and Pollock on the bench to come on, and Pollock will be the absolute panto villain tomorrow. There's no question he will. And I kind of want the Scotland crowd to, rather than fuel it, to ignore it, because I think it just adds to the whole thing. But I do wonder if Jamie Ritchie gets a Ryan Wilson role, and as the players are going back up the tunnel, he goes and flicks George Horne's ear and starts a little niggle to try, the mind games. It's where can you see it being won? That's what I'm trying to get to. The set piece doesn't fill me with a huge amount of excitement. Gilco obviously is the one, or one of the ones who has suffered because he's dropped completely out the squad, and we know that he's been an on-field coach and line out is his thing. Ashley's injured, so he drops out. So it's not completely new, but it's largely a new line out tomorrow. So yeah. Have we got that upper sleeve that we have a second line out to go against England, whose line out is, they bring in Maro Itoje. Like their changes to bring him in, and look how Dickie starts and Jamie George goes to. I mean, come on, if that was in the playground, you'd be going, come on, that's no fair teams, let's pick again. Like that's.
Yeah, 100%. You would, and you're right. And Scotland have given a start to look. I think, and we can pick out every team selection and debate every position, but the idea for me, I thought George Turner was so lucky just to see yellow last week, and now it's almost that indiscipline, and it was such a costly penalty at such a time. Scotland were in Italy's 22, and it just changed the whole momentum of the game. He starts, and the line-out was by no means all well and good when he came on. And again, I thought Gregor's substitutions were odd in Rome. He brought Gregor Brown on for Gilco and left Max Williamson on the bench, and then brought Max Williamson on for Matt Fagerson. So that to me doesn't make a whole heap of sense. He's gone for Gregor Brown in the second row, but he, by his own admission, Gregor Brown is a small international second row, and he'll give away probably 4 or 5 inches of height to Marrow and Ollie Chesham, and then
Gregor made a comment in his press conference about he doesn't always get his substitutions right. It was a small comment, but I wondered, he seemed to be pretty open that he doesn't always get those things right.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, and there's a clip going around. BBC have clipped up Tom English saying, "What did you do wrong?"
Yeah,
last week.
Tom was pretty relentless.
But Gregor again refused to sort of say, well, here are the 3 things I've identified that I've done that might have made a difference. Whether it was a sub or the selection, maybe he didn't get it right. And I think the evidence is that he didn't. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I think Scotland have to play out their skin now to beat an England team that are 12 in a row. The line out, the scrum worry me. I think if Scotland get on top, I suppose we're in that catch-22 now. If Scotland get on top and score a few tries, we're still waiting for the collapse. We're waiting for that moment where it all unravels now, because we've seen it so many times and we've been in this movie before. And look, none of us particularly everybody wants to see Scotland do well. We all want to see Scotland win. Nobody wants to be, kicking Gregor or talking about his job or Sione or whoever it might be. But the reality is, and Sione said it today, this, at that level, the direction of travel is judged on results. And Scotland's results over the last year have been pretty miserable.
It's a tough one for the players. Like Pierre doesn't get to start, and this is because we're now into how it's a squad game. Gregor did make a comment about it being a 23-man game, but he didn't put Adam Hastings on last week, which I thought was just one of those things that you say because that's what but you've got people picking that up. But you've got Jamie Ritchie coming in. Pierre, will likely come on after half an hour, I think. I could be wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if Nathan Macbeth's number goes up after half an hour and then Pierre.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he uses Pierre.
You got Dave Cherry, who in a similar way to Jamie Ritchie is a niggle, is a pest, is a gnarly, annoying hooker. I'll be interested to see how early he comes on. I'm not sure about the other forward substitutions. And then in the back line, George Horne, I think, deserves to play longer in a test match. Adam Hastings, I'd be really surprised to see how much game time he gets. And I don't know how it goes at Test rugby. Have they had a meeting yesterday or Wednesday to say, Nathan, by the way, you'll be coming off after half an hour. The plan is that Pierre goes on and plays for 50 minutes. George, you're coming off at half time, or is it's by gut? It's Adam will use you if and when we think it's right. Darcy, you were talking before about Jamie Dobie's USP is that he can play in 2 positions. Darcy and Adam Hastings will only replace a winger and a fly half. George Horne will likely only replace a scrum half, which means, well, I don't know what that means. Like, if there's an injury, TJ can go into the centre and possibly Kyle Steyn goes to 15. Does Adam Hastings play at 15, having played there some time?
It all feels, I think, like there's an obvious solution to this staring everybody in the face, that Blair Kinghorn is the guy who, if you don't pick Tom Jordan on the bench, Blair's the guy, because he can cover just about the rest of the back line, and then you've got guys round about him who can fill the rest. So to me, there's an obvious problem there that Blair's not even in the 23 and being sent back to possibly play for Toulouse this weekend. I think the rest of it, you're right, like George deserves to play, but like, look, now 19 and 20, Max Williamson and Matt Fagerson have got a huge job to do, because they'll be the guys sent on to combat Pollock and all the things that he brings, Curry, and the class that he is. Like, I just...
Who does Fagerson come on for?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm not sure if I've read far too much into this, but Gregor said yesterday Matt Fagerson can play...
He can play 6, 7, 8.
We said he can play 8 as well as 6 and 7, and I thought, I think there's a plan here to maybe get Dempsey off at some point, and I thought, I'm not sure, and there are some players I'm not sure I see Scotland beating top teams without. Finn is one, Xander would be another, and Dempsey would be the third. Sione probably number 4. Do you know, these guys have got to play 80 minutes. So the team selection to me is odd and curious again, and it seems so glaringly obvious that Scotland are going to be overpowered up front, and I really, really hope that we're not looking at England playing Ben Earl against Sione for the last 20 minutes, because that in a Calcutta Cup would just be like horrendous. That would be as bad as it gets. And the other thing I think we've got to bear in mind, and I think you and I just spoken about this before we came on, last time Scotland played at Murrayfield, there was boos at full time. And I mean in a big game. They beat Tonga, and that was a nice afternoon out. Everybody got to see a few tries. But when they lost to Argentina, this team was booed off. If this goes badly tomorrow and it's Gregor's 100th game in charge, there could be boos for the team and there could be boos for him. And I just wonder at what point somebody like Alex Williamson, David Nucifora have to take notice and say, do you know what? We need to make a decision here.
I know where you're going. They can't be making a decision based on the boos and Murrayfield crowd. I hope there's not boos. Whether if folk are upset, I get it, but the booing thing I didn't enjoy in the autumn. No, that was there, but I didn't enjoy that, and I hope it doesn't happen again. But the pressure will be there, because it's such a big game and it's been built up, and all you folk in the media are making the narrative. It's your fault. Do you know one of the things that was in my head? I was driving, and Scotland have had a clutch of British Lions in the last 2 tours, and we've been quite proud of that. And I'm not sure when we've been in a position. Duhan's not selected. Rory Sutherland's not selected. Hamish Watson's not even getting to play for Edinburgh. Blair Kinghorn's not selected. Ewan Ashman, is injured. And Pierre is on the bench. And Darcy is on the bench. So we've that. It almost feels like an embarrassment of riches. But where... I don't know where. One of the things that was spoken about, and I was with Sean Lenine before the Lions tour, and he was really positive about this Six Nations, because how Scotland have been after Lions tours when they've had representation. And we had a coach on the tour this time with John DL, and I think I was as well. And then the autumn happened, and it's just not quite clicked, and I don't think any of us actually have the answer. I'll be really brutal here. I don't think Franco is the answer to make all this better. I don't have the answer. I hope the answer is in amongst the people that are selected tomorrow in the group that are there tomorrow. I'm not sure I'd go with Peter de Villiers to say if we win tomorrow, we're then on to start winning the tournament. I think that was maybe a misplaced quote. I hope it's not. I hope he's right. I hope we win tomorrow and then we win the next 4. We win the championship. Like go for it. I hope that's the case. But unfortunately, we're living with a recent history, and everyone's so aware of it and so aware of every comment that we need to see the action, we need to see the performance, we need to see a result tomorrow. And I'm not sure it will make everything better, but it certainly won't make anything worse.
No, and that's it. I think, look, we've spoken about this loads of times. This Scotland team, over the years, have proved themselves capable of big one-off results. If they get one tomorrow, people will say, well, they've done that before. Scotland have beaten England. They've almost got a hex over England in this fixture, especially at Murrayfield. You know, growing up, I remember going to some games and it was like you knew that England and that England team with Martin Johnson, Lawrence Delalio, Johnny Wilkinson, etc., were going to win by 30 points. Now, Scotland's dominance hasn't been to that extent, but you look at and say, well, England haven't won at Murrayfield since 2020. That game was a bit of an anomaly because it was played in an absolute downpour. But I think the next two, Scotland could essentially win the next two, and people will say that's proved nothing because they've beaten England and they've got this dominance in the Calcutta Cup at Murrayfield, and they've beaten Wales, who, you know, you and me could round up some pals and play, and we might give them a game.
I would be very careful with that chat. I do not think that is going to be as straightforward as maybe everybody thinks it is.
And I think particularly if the momentum is negative after tomorrow, as I've said before, Steve Tandy will look at that and say, hang on a minute, these are beatable. And I know that Scotland can be mentally fallible to implosions at times. So if we put pressure on them, and if Cardiff gets behind Wales, gee, all of a sudden I can make a case for 0-3.
Which is also a struggle. But if you're Wales, you're looking at what can you achieve out of this Six Nations. You know, God love Jockey Sherritt and Steve Tandy and others who came out last week saying, yeah, we got beat, but the level of performance wasn't good enough. That's not what we expect. That's not. And there was quite a nice honesty about that. It makes me sad to see what's going on with Ospreys. It makes me sad to see they're giving away tickets. They can't fill the Millennium, Principality. I've only been once, and I think I was in my church. What a place it was. It was just, you'll have been there more often than I was, but I was pinching myself when I was there. I worry about that, but I think that's next week's worry. Everything is into tomorrow. I would love to be in camp. I would love to see what's going on. I would love to be the cheerleader, and I'd love to be in there seeing if I could help and making things better. But, you know, they've got so many experienced people in and around them. That team has got British Lions in it. It's got winners in it. It's got Premiership winners. There's so much in there. Boys, it's your time to shine. Like, you've almost, and this is wrong, you've almost got nothing to lose, but they actually have.
Yeah, I mean, I think
there's actually a lot to lose tomorrow, and I don't think that's a motivating factor. The boys won't have turned off their social media. I think it's now become almost impossible to have a social media blackout. So they're reading stuff, they're hearing stuff, it's tough. Their families are hearing it. That will impact. I just hope it's 4:40, which I hope's a good thing. I hope that slightly later kickoff will be a good thing. I hope the crowd are whipped up into a frenzy and probably half gassed on Valentine's lunchtime bottles of Pinot Grigio. I hope the anthem goes well. My mate, the trophy guy, is going to be holding the big Guinness flag. He's right excited. He's getting on the pitch tomorrow. I start, the issue in the autumn was we couldn't finish. And then against Italy, the first 20 minutes didn't turn up, and then we finished reasonably strongly. There was something there. Can we stick something together that when England have dominance, we don't concede penalties and don't concede cards. When we have opportunities, can we please take them?
Yeah, and that's it. That's exactly the point, I think. And look, I would be quite happy if it, 7:45 tomorrow night, Gregor and Sione are sat in front of us in Murrayfield saying,
"Told you so."
Have we proved a bit of a point now? We've got the Calcutta Cup in front of us, and Scotland are still in with a shout of Triple Crown and actually just being competitive in the whole thing. I can't move away from this idea that 5-3-6-2, the sort of Pom squad, Pollock and Curry and Jamie George, and they're just going to say, do you know what? Like, I think Alex Coles, I know I watch a lot of Prem rugby, but like Alex Coles on the bench is a fabulous player, and they're going to bring him off the bench. And I think there's a lot resting on the shoulders of somebody like Pierre to, if it needs it, try and change momentum, all the while getting his job right as the anchor to the scrum, which went so badly wrong last week. Look, we'll wait and see, but
I just don't know. I can't. I kind of want to just get to 440 so we can see it happen. The tap penalties, Ashy taps and just goes at sort of 45-degree angle. Can we have some variation there? Can there be something that we've not seen? Can we have a line out where, the Alec Dunbar, was it?
Yes, it was Alex Dunbar. Yeah, that's right.
Can we? And it's not trick plays. That's not what it is. The foundations have to be the scrum, the line out, the defense has to be on. We have to take our chance. Like, I get all that stuff, but can we see some invention? Can we see something that has been planned purely for this game against England?
Get Kyle staying in the line out. I like that. It's too Franco, it's too Glasgow. But do you know what? At this stage, let's roll with it and see where we get to.
The 5-3 bench I find intriguing because it felt like that had been a move away, and while I want that, I want there to be backs involved. I want there, if you're going to use replacements, which is a whole other bugbear of mine, I want to see, these players are there with intent. I'm just not sure they're there with intent. Darcy comes on for Dobie. George Horn comes on for Ben White. Adam comes on for Finn. That I'm not sure where that goes. I'm not sure what happens or changes. In what game does Gregor want Adam to come on for Finn Russell? Like, what would be the situation that Finn Russell comes off for Adam Hastings?
But for me, that's one of the keys. Is I think I'm now worried that Finn might be carrying some sort of injury, and all of a sudden we find out that Finn can't play Ireland, can't play France because he's got a knock. I'm totally bamboozled by that. I don't really understand it at all. There was so many other things sort of addressed last week that we never got a chance to. Yesterday that we never got a chance to ask Gregor. But it'll be interesting to see if Adam doesn't get on again, what the kind of chat is about that post-match.
Yeah, I don't want to bump into his old man again if he's not got on for a second game in a row. The bit that last week was such a bright star in the sky was the under-20s performance, and I took great delight in Jake DL performing because I was raging at some of the absolute nonsense that I saw posted about Jake DL, especially on the article you'd done about Jake DL being in, people saying because of the school he goes to, because he's old man and he's too young. I mean, utter ignorance of just, it wound me up. So when he performed, and see that grubber kick, I think there is I could be wrong, I would maybe need to source it. I think there's a YouTube clip of Jake DL pulling that grubber kick in schoolboy rugby and scoring half a dozen tries. it's a tool that, and it's the kind of thing he's probably practiced against Junior in the back. He's doing A-levels, Lapman, in the back green against his brother.
And you know what?
That's the kind of thing that very few players that have come in through the system now have been in the back garden knocking lumps out their brother, and probably with their old man sitting at the kitchen with a cup of tea with a big smile on his face at them knocking lumps at each other. So good. And I thought Hamish MacArthur at 9, and this is my Bruce's bias kicking in here, I thought he was phenomenal. And he only didn't get player of the match because JDL was getting player of the match. Up front, I thought they matched up physically. They looked. I was really chuffed for Fergus Pringle. I was really chuffed for that group of boys. And it'll be interesting to see how they go tonight. It'll be really interesting to see how they go tonight.
Yeah,
because England had a tough one against Wales.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think your assessment of last week's hit the nail on the head. I thought Jake Dale was superb. I think it's a big step up this weekend. Traditionally that England game's always been a big struggle. Let's see how they go though. But, if we need a bit of confidence before the main event, 7:15 at the Hive is maybe not the worst place to be.
Jake Dale's fan club will be all over that. There'll be a massive group of boys. I think it'll be well supported. I'm gutted I can't be there, and I'm really chuffed for Hamish MacArthur. I think that kid has got so much potential. And then you bring back Wolfenden, so hopefully they're stronger than they were last week with players returning. And Wolfie, he's a big, impressive character. I was really chuffed. I was really pleased to see the 20s perform. And there's a lot of good kids in there, and there's a few guys in there who are back for year 2 of under 20s. They're not quite Kerr Yule style that started when they were 13, but there's some boys in there with some good under 20s experience.
Yeah, there is, and I hope they'll need that. They'll need that in the game tonight. Somebody like Ollie Blythe-Lafferty will have to step up.
Yeah,
they'll need Christian Lindsay, who's been in that environment before. They'll need Jake DL. Let's make no bones about the fact he's 17 and he's a kid and he's not played at probably as big a game, but he'll need to take control of the team just like he did last week. And I really hope it goes well. And I hope, when we spoke to Kenny Murray during last year's Six Nations, he was saying a measure of the success of a 20s program is the results, but it's also the development of the players. And I think you see that with like a Tom Curry, Liam McConnell, Freddie Douglas, now sort of Kerr Yule making their way into the pro ranks and into Scotland squads, etc. I think this is the next challenge, is to deliver more consistent results. They might not always be wins, but let's get closer to those top teams that are England, France, So let's see. I'm interested to see how it goes. But yeah, it'll be a big test for them.
Yeah, it's exciting though, and it's nice to have that to look forward to. I don't just mean the game, I mean those players developing. Now, let's not get too carried away. That's exactly what it should be. an under 20s should be. Listen, it's going to be someone else. There's going to be plenty to talk about, plenty to write about. There are other games on, but let's face it, our eyes are entirely on Murrayfield. Big fella, I will see you there. Look forward to it. Let's hope there is a lot of nice things to write about, and next week's social media is all sunshine, rainbows and butterflies. How's that sound?
Fingers crossed, eh? Wouldn't that be nice?
Fingers crossed. Final word from our sponsor. The Scotland Rugby News podcast has been brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV right now. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland, and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go on, start searching. Big fella, look after yourself. See you at Murrayfield. Come on, Scotland. Come on.